started on our crust. Now I promised you this is a no rise crust, and it's a little bit unusual. The first time I saw this recipe, I thought this will never work. It works great. We're going to get our bowl to start assembling everything. And of course, we're going to weigh this. When we talked about in our biscuit show about how you should weigh, anytime you bake, if you want it to be consistent, you should weigh it because it'll be the exact same every single time. So we have two ingredients that we need to weigh. One of them is our flour, and for this we're going to use all-purpose flour. Remember, if you are using self-rising flour, it already has salt and baking powder in it. So make sure you check the side that this is just all-purpose. If you have only self-rising, then omit the baking powder and salt we're getting ready to put in. So we're going to put our bowl here, get our handy kitchen scale, and this is going to take 2 cups of all-purpose flour. So 2 cups, as you know, each cup is 120 grams. So 2 of those, we're going to go with 240 grams. We're going to zero that out and keep it on grams, so we're tare weighted out. We're going to take our all-purpose flour, and we need 240 grams. 240 grams of AP flour. We're going to place that here. Now we're going to use 1 cup of whole Greek yogurt. So we're going to place this here and zero this back out. Now whole yogurt is going to be 224 grams. We want the Greek yogurt because it's a little bit thicker. So we're going to take this. Remember these? Love it. So we're going to do 224 grams of whole Greek yogurt. $145, $198. Now it's coming down to the wire. You gotta be careful. $215, $226, $228. Rats. You know, you always think this time I'm going to do it exactly. Nah, you don't. Now you're asking yourself, is that little dab going to do that much difference? Probably not. You could probably eyeball it, but if you want to cook consistently, then measuring is the key. Okay. So here's our yogurt. And now we're going to take some baking powder because we need it to puff just a little bit. That's our rising agent, and a little bit of salt. So we're going to mix in. This is our all-purpose flour. And for this, we're going to use some baking powder and 3 teaspoons baking powder. 1, 2, and 3. So you're saying, well, how come you're not weighing your baking powder? I could, but 3 teaspoons, pretty easy to do. Now on salt, we're going to use the same finely ground sea salt that we used in the rest of it. And for that, we're going to use 1/2 of a teaspoon, 1/2 of a teaspoon. Now, here's where things can get interesting. I like to have my crust as tasty as everything else. So I'm going to add a tiny bit, 1/4 of a teaspoon of onion powder to this to kind of mimic that onion flavor that we're going to have on top of the pizza, and a little bit in the marinara. So I'm going to go with 1/4 of a teaspoon, not much, of onion powder. And I want to put in a little bit of your basic Italian seasoning. Now we have fresh herbs here that we're going to be using for the top, but it's okay. I'm using this inside the dough itself, and I'm going to go, I really like a good herby crust, so I'm going to go with 1 teaspoon. And that's going to give us some extra flavor in the crust itself. Your dough should be the bread that you're eating your pizza with, and it should be just as delicious as anything else. So to this, we're going to add in our yogurt. So I've got it basically mixed here. I'm going to mix the rest with my hands. Now, if right here it feels like it's not wet enough, we're going to add a little bit of extra yogurt, a little bit of warm water, whatever it is that you feel. And again, feel. So as you can see, this is coming together, but we're still getting a little bit dry. So I'm going to add a little bit more yogurt and then maybe a little bit of warm water to this. It's easier to add than it is to take out. Can't take out. So I'm going to wash my hands and come back with a little bit of water and a little bit more yogurt. As you can see, it's a little bit dry. This isn't going to come together, and this should be a pretty damp dough. We want it to have lots of rise and give to it. So I'm going to add a little bit to this. We're going to start with the yogurt first. I'm going to add just, this is about a tablespoon, maybe a tablespoon and a half. I'm going to mix that in there. And as I do this, I'm going to add just a little bit of warm water. You just want to watch the dough come together. Remember, it's easier to add than to start over. Okay, so now we're starting to see the dry pieces kind of incorporate a little bit more. I'm going to add a tiny touch more of warm water, and then we're going to set this aside and work on our marinara sauce. It's about, so far we've added about a 1/4 cup. Now you can see it's starting to come together. It's a little bit wet. And we don't have to worry about this rising because we don't need it to rise. We're just going to pat this out on a pizza stone on top of a little bit of yellow cornmeal, and off we're going to go. Okay, so here he is. He's going to sit here for a second. And I like to make it a little bit ahead of time, just so those flavors kind of get in there and that flour has, or the salt has time to get a little hydrated. To take our crust out of here, I'm going to flour my hands because it is a little bit of a wet dough, and we're going to pull it out and just put it onto a quick floured surface. Our oven is preheated right now to 425 degrees because we are almost in pizza time. So I'm going to take this, and I may have to add more flour as we go. You can see it's pretty sticky. As you continue with it, you can just add a little bit more. And I'm not going to use a rolling pin. I'm not a big fan, but I am going to use a little bit more flour because that is a little bit stickier than I want. Okay. It's really hot and humid today, so everything's sticky. So we're gonna, where's my bench scraper? There he is. So we're just gonna bring him up, get him a little bit of flour on there, bring him up and over, just like we did biscuits. Most of everything is just different ingredients, same techniques. Once you learn one, you pretty much got it down pat. So we're gonna, this is a really super soft dough, and it makes a really yummy, yummy crust. That yogurt in there, those herbs, that little bit of salt, all of that is going to lend itself beautifully to a wonderful crust. Now, we don't want to do kneading. I just need to get it to where we can make I'm going to do this as a free form on a pizza dish. This is a ceramic one. You can, and I have done it in a cast iron and make it deeper. That's always nice too, but we're going to do it on here. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to continue working with it on here. I've got a little cornmeal down so that it will not stick, and it adds that really yummy little crunch you get. And I'm just going to make a basic circle. Now, so the question is, well, if you keep needing more flour, why didn't you put more flour in? As that dough rested a little bit, remember, it's easier to add than it is to take out. I don't want a tough and doughy pizza crust. I want something that's light and yummy and has some really good chew to it, but I don't want to use bread flours. We'll use bread flours another time. So I'm going to put just a little bit of a lip on this so that he has kind of a place to hold. It's about 1/8 of an inch thick. If you wanted to use this in your cast iron to make a deep dish, then you would just really make sure that cast iron is hot, put a lot of the cornmeal in the bottom, and then cook it. Now I usually, because I have pizza peels and things that if you do, you can do this. Pizza peels, the big wooden or metal, big huge spatula that you make this on and then slide it onto it. But you would have this really hot already. But right now I have my oven at 425 degrees preheated, and I have the rack on the lower rack, and that's what we're going to use to cook this off. We have our marinara off the stove. It was just slightly simmering. We just wanted to give those flavors a little chance to get to know each other. Now we're going to do a little bit onto the pizza crust. Again, layers of flavors. I don't want to par bake this, but I do want a little bit of a flavor here, so I'm going to take the tiniest bit of olive oil, and I'm just going to use my silicone brush, and I'm just going to brush it, especially the edges, because I'm going to add a little flavoring to those edges. Again, start small, build up. You don't want to add too much. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit more. Nothing is better than the taste of wonderful, yummy olive oil. I'm going to make sure I get those sides, and I'm going to do some more of that in a minute because I'm going to put on a little bit of gray salt around the outside. We're going to have a whole section on salt, so if you are curious about how salts are different, you will love some of these different salts. Okay, so this is fairly covered. I'm going to put a little bit on my brush and just go around these edges because I want these to brown beautifully. And I'm going to add a little bit of salt, and this oil will help that salt stick. So as I go around, I just want to take a little peep at it, make sure that all the little edges are getting done. Okay, so this guy over here, he's needing some love. Nothing says love like extra virgin olive oil, right? I think I saw somewhere that the United States is one of the largest users of extra virgin olive oil.